Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back. And today we're going to be looking at the patch update. This will be version 2.0. So we're not going up by increments of 1.1, 1.2, 1. We're just going to go version 1, version 2, version 3, because that makes it easier for everyone to know where you're at when you're downloading, apparently. So we got a few things to go over today. First, we'll look at the new toys. There's only 3 new mods in there. It's nothing like too crazy on this one. There is a whole bunch of stuff that's being worked on right now, but some of it is not ready yet. So I wanted to get this patch out because it fixes a lot of stuff that people were having issues with, but there's only a few new toys, so don't get too disheartened by the lack of toys because there's lots coming. So first up, we have a new grapple. This is the Power Clam W, letter W. They're all just lettered names to make life easier. So this one is the W. It's a little bit more of a pulp style one. It's got a really fat width claw on it. And yeah, very similar to anybody who's ever used a pulpwood grapple. So you got this really thick, kind of meaty grab on it. So it's really good. It doesn't hold as much depth-wise. You can't hold as many logs depth-wise, but it does have a really good stability when you're picking up even long logs and other such stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really nice little grapple. Super nice for if you're using smaller machines too. Like if you're just looking at doing some sorting and you don't want a huge gigantic grapple, this one is great for doing smaller sorts, or if you're doing hoe chucking, that kind of stuff. It works really well for that. So you guys will probably like that. Anyway, I'm not going to play on this for too long. I'll let you guys do that because it'll get abusive. So that's one new toy. I know lots of people wanted a bit of a wider grapple. We use a lot of these up in where I live, so they're very popular. The next big toy is the Tigercat 850. So this was one that the supporters from Patreon and YouTube, everybody who donates, they voted on this beautiful machine, and now we have it. So this is the Tigercat 850, usually used in a harvesting. I don't know if they're used for anything else. I think they're mostly just used for harvesting. So we put a really big long arm on it with for the harvesting arms for doing processing, but you can hook up whatever you want to it. You can put that grapple on there. You can put a different processor head. You can do whatever you want. Put the grinder on there as well. But yeah, it turned out really nice. Beautiful little cab. Yeah, these are usually used for like roadside processing and stuff. There's a few videos of a few of them out there. I would say they're not as I wouldn't say popular, but you don't see a whole lot of them out in like social media land. There's a few people on TikTok that use this style body that I've seen, but I have had a few requests for this style of body. And like I said, we put it out to vote for the Patreons and the YouTube members. So if you guys want to become a YouTube or Patreon member, you can go to www.fdrlogging.com/donate. It grants you access to the ability to donate on the next mod that's getting made and kind of share your feedback and all that kind of fun stuff. So this was the one that got voted on. So yeah, it's got a nice little cab, really smooth, kind of easy to see from, which is I'm really happy with. I really like the visibility on this one. One thing I'm trying to stay away from, even in the creation of mods, is I'm trying to get away from anything with blocked windows. So if it's got huge bars and covered up, like either I'm pulling those bars out just for the simplicity of playing, or I'm not going to make that machine if it's got really bad visibility, because we're already hindered enough in a simulator. You want to come into this game and have good visibility. That's why I really like that Cat 558. Because basically it's just looking through a giant glass window on the front. You don't have a lot of bars and stuff blocking it. So yeah, Tigercat 850, beautiful. It's a great machine. I think you guys are really going to like it. Great for processing. I was actually using it I was using that grapple, the new grapple, and I was using it for piling on one. That was actually pretty handy. So, but like I said, it's got a very long extended boom arm on it, so you can reach out really far. Very similar to this Hitachi style one that's got that long arm. I think the Hitachi still has a little bit more reach, not by much, but a little bit more reach than this guy, but this one's got a huge reach on it too. The other thing that people are screaming about that is back is the fixed head processor. I had so many emails. Honestly, I wasn't even going to bring this back because not a lot of people used it, I thought, in 22. But yeah, I made a comment saying, yeah, I don't think I'm going to bring the fixed head back because nobody really used it. And then my email exploded and people were like, don't do it. I want it. So here's the fixed head processor. Again, the fixed head's different because obviously the fixed head you control with your tilt. and it's very stationary. It's not a dangle head, so it doesn't swing around. It's solid while you're moving. So let's grab a couple here since we're here. I think I was cutting long logs. Let's double check here. We were cutting... Oh, we're going to just reset it. So, again, it's a lot more... Like I said, it's very stationary. You control the movement of everything. It's really easy to pile. It's kind of like cheat mode for some people. It's really easy to whip the tops, too, because they stay really sturdy. I'm still a big fan of the Dangle head processor because I'm just so used to it. And actually, in this update, there's a lot of improvements to the Dangle head, too. So, but honestly, like, I don't know. I got nothing against the fixed head. They're just not really used in common modern day practices at the moment. Nobody really... There's one video on YouTube for one that's like in Alberta, and it was like 13 years ago, where they built... Tigercat built a whole system for doing fixed head, a fixed head style like this one. But for the most part, you don't really see these style of processor heads. So that's why I was kind of thinking like, well, maybe I won't make it because it's kind of not really used in modern stuff. But hey, you know what? Maybe we'll make it so popular again that we'll bring back the fixed head into the nation. Anyway, as you can see, it works really smooth, really easy to process, and easy to control. I think people in multiplayer really like this one because it doesn't dangle around. The leg's already hard enough. So anyway, you have it up. It's a lot fancier looking than the other one. Obviously, it's got some cool hose work and some other stuff that's going on there to make it a little more fun. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy that, and that'll be pretty cool. So that's it for toys. Again, not a huge list of new toys on this update. I wanted to push this update a little faster because I do have a whole bunch of fixes that we're going to go over here. And I've spent another 10 million friggin' hours playing with the grapples and adjusting the log physics and stuff, which we're going to go over a bit. So this update should be a lot better. So we'll start with the update stuff. So very first thing is the map. So the map has been updated, but don't worry, it won't mess up your save games. So you can install the new map. Your save games will be just fine. The only thing that's really changed in the map is just the tree physics. So I adjusted the physics yet again. So the first time I put out the update, people said, oh, the trees were... the trees were too static, like they stuck together, there were too much friction on them, they were too sticky. So then the second update I put out, they said it was too slippery, and then it was too static. So anyway, this is kind of the happy medium, and I did an FDR logging video that'll be coming out in a while, where I talk about frame rate and the relation of frame rate to the actual logs. So these logs, unlike FS22, are a little bit different. They don't have as much rolling friction. So basically, if I turn on my strength here, so if I grab one of these logs and I throw it on the ground, you see how it doesn't roll? It just slides. There's no like rolling friction. So in this game, they kind of disabled the rolling friction, and I'm not entirely sure why. It's really hard to make them roll. Before, I used to be able to grab one of these, chuck it, and it would roll, like it would roll over on the ground, like over and over and over. And in this game, it just doesn't, right? So basically what that means is when I'm loading a log trailer, which can get really frustrating. Actually, I'm going to bring this over here. What happens is when you're trying to load a log trailer, because the logs do not roll like they do in real life, what happens is if you have the frictions on those trees set too high, which they basically are at stock, and they are... before this update, they would not settle correctly in the bunks. And what I mean by that is if I were to take this big handful of logs and chuck it into the bunks, they would just stack. They would go up, 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 but they wouldn't slide down. So for instance, if I filled, let's turn this off so I don't grab my trailer. If I were to take a grapple that only filled a quarter of this bunk and dump it there and dump another one and another one and another one, it would just keep stacking, and it would never naturally roll or fall down into the bunk and create like a nice pile. It was really frustrating. Even in this last update, like the 1.0 HF one that you guys are using, it was really horrible loading trucks. It was a pain in the butt. You're constantly smashing the head down into the load to try to squish the logs together, and they just would never settle properly. So in this update, The frictions have been changed. So yes, the logs are slipperier. They slide a lot more. And the reason for that is because now when you dump them in a pile, they'll slip off each other and actually settle into the bunk properly. And I'm going to stop talking and we'll show you. In turn, because they're slipperier, they don't act 100% realistically in terms of how they settle on the ground. So they're a little more slick. But as you can see, they roll up into the grapples a little bit better. They just act a lot nicer in general. So if I go dump this into this bunk here, and I dump it, do you see how they fall? They start to slide off each other and settle. I'm not really having to work super hard to get those in there. So here we go. Grab another little arm here. Schwink. There we go. We're kind of parked on a weird hill here too. So we're bouncing around. So now when I dump these in here, you see how they start to roll and fall? See that one on its own, just rolling down into the bunk? That's pretty much how real life logs work. I mean, I've unloaded a lot of these in real life, so I can tell you right now, the odd time, yes, the trees are really dry and they stick a bit to each other, but for the most part, they roll down like they just did. If you dump a log and it's heavy, it'll go bounce, 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 and land down into the bunk. And that's how they settle. That's how physics work in reality, right? So unfortunately in this game, if I turn the frictions up too high, you don't get that effect anymore. It kind of goes away. And what happens is they just pile on top of each other and they stick. So, I mean, these are pretty settling okay. You get a few, like if you get those little ones, see that little one up top of them swinging around all kind of? You get those little ones will just act silly because, well, they're not real logs, so. But again, if you go and you dump it in there, it settles. Like, it settles nice. And then when you do decide to push it, if you want to, like, push your logs around, you see how I'm just tapping it and the logs are kind of naturally falling into place and settling a little bit. And that's how it is in real life. That's how you sort trailers. You can give them little taps and the logs kind of push down. Now, in the last update, man, you could sit here and hammer on those logs as hard as you wanted, and sometimes they just wouldn't drop down because the frictions were just so ridiculous. And that's because of that rolling issue. The logs just do not roll anymore for whatever reason. I don't know what happened there, but no more rolling. So, as I stated in a video that you guys will see here when it comes out in a little while, in an FDR video where I talk about frame rates and all that fun stuff, I'm not going to go over the whole thing again, but basically the gist of it is, if you have a crappy computer or really low frame rates, your logs are going to act crappy. So, for instance, if I switch it over to physics mode right now, my frame rate, well, it's still 36, which isn't terrible. But sometimes people get down to like the 20s for their frame rate. Anything under 40, you're probably not going to have a great time with the physics. It's just not. See, as I turn, it drops. You start to get jittery, and it's just a bad time. So the lower your frame rate, which is that number up in the top corner, the worse the physics are going to react. The more slippery and bouncy the logs are going to act. So, for instance, if I pick this up at 36, it's probably actually not going to be too bad. But as you can see, the logs will jitter. As I turn this way, you're going to watch the logs just jitter and freak out because see how they're slipping right out of the grapple? And what that is the game reacting to the frame rate of your computer and trying to update. So as I'm going back and forth, it's jittery, they're slipping. But as soon as that frame rate restores, so if I turn physics mode off, it goes back up to a smooth 60, you don't have that problem anymore. The logs are acting just like they normally do, right? So the frame rate of your game really does play into the physics. I hear lots of people saying, oh, the trees just fly around, they don't do anything, nothing like your videos. Okay, well, then you need to go into your graphics settings, you need to turn down your graphics, lower your quality level, or buy a better computer. That's kind of the only option. I hate to say that, but that's just the truth of the matter. So, again, I have a video coming out here soon where I go over my graphics settings, I go over all that stuff. It's one of the FDR logging episodes, and I go highly into frame rate and how it affects and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to leave that out of this video, but if your logs are slipping and sliding when you're playing with them with the grapple, they might do that a teeny bit while you're operating with the smaller pieces, but they shouldn't do that at all with the other stuff. So it's best to try to keep your frame rate in a happy place while you're playing, and then you won't have any bad moments. Okay, so continuing to the patch notes, we kind of deetered off there. But yeah, log physics have changed. The logs are more slippery, but They settle way better in bunks. Bunching them's easier, skidding, everything's easier. Grapples respond to them way better. It's just a really good time. So moving on to the next patch notes, all about the TimberPro forwarder. I made some changes to this guy to make it so that the grapple works a lot better. It's got better sway control, so it's swinging, it's not flying all over the place. And I made the shape of the claw a little bit different so that it doesn't, it dumps a little bit better. So this claw used to be more like circular shaped, like the claws got a little tighter, but I noticed people were saying that they're having issues with it hanging up when they went to dump their claw. So I made the claw a little bit narrower in terms of its grab shape. So now when you go grab, let's just grab a couple here. Now when you go to actually dump them into the trailer, it lets go a lot better. So I open wide open. See how they just fall right out? They don't catch on the claws, because I found people were opening them and it was catching on the claws a little bit in our testing. So I just made them a little bit thinner, and it seems to work pretty good. We played with the sway. So it sways from side to side, but not as aggressively. It sways back and forth, but not as aggressively. You still have the ability to like pencil and stuff if you want to do that. Like if you want to swing them up, but it doesn't sway as violently from side to side. So you're going to find it's just a lot more stable while you're operating. So if you put this in there, you'll know it'll just feel better. In general, it's just, yeah, way better experience. So grab one more here. The claw's also been upgraded. It's grabs a lot better, and again, playing with the new tree physics, everything slides and grabs a lot better when you're rolling it up in the grapples, which is kind of my whole gig, is to get a better experience with the grapple play, because that's what I'm all about, is having a good experience. The rotation on the grapple is a lot more sensitive too. Like, I wouldn't say sensitive, I'd say it's more responsive. So when I grab out of this pile, let's see if I can grab this here. Rotating left and right is more responsive. So you'll feel your button swing is a lot more responsive, and you're not really fighting with it as much. Same with the claw itself. Opening and closing is a little bit more responsive to your actual button presses. There's no more lag delay there. Okay, moving on. So all grapples, that was the biggest change in the whole thing. So every single grapple on every machine, including the forwarder, skidder, everything has been improved greatly. So let's go to this guy again. So this is the new grapple, obviously, but all of these grapples have been greatly improved. I was trying to find a flat spot here, so I can, whoops. So it helps if I push the right button there. Let's see, how about right here? Oh, it feels pretty good. Okay, so basically the grapples are more responsive. So when I go to close it, it's way more responsive. I had some complaints and feedback about there was too much lag. So like you'd push the button and it would take too long to open and close the arms. Like it wouldn't respond as quickly. So now just tapping gives quite a bit response. It's a lot more, I don't know how to explain it. It's a lot more responsive. That's basically it. The other thing I got rid of was the, before when I closed the grapple, if I swung the cab side to side, the claws would slide back and forth like they'd have give to them. So I've removed that, which I haven't tested in multiplayer, but it should remove that effect where the claws are floating off of the head. When you push it into the pile, the claws would sometimes float up in multiplayer just to visual glitches or whatever. I think that should fix it, but I haven't tested that because I think that's what was causing all the issues. There is still give in the claws, so if I push this claw into the ground, you can see there still is some give to it. It's not as much give as before, but I found a better way to do the claws now. So, yeah, so basically that whole jittery system is now out, and the claws are a lot more responsive and a lot more intense. But as you can see, it rolls the logs up really nice, and it hangs on really, really well. So the claws are a lot more responsive, and it feels a lot more realistic. Last update, like I said, the logs had so much friction to them, it was actually really hard to get them into a nice roll-up like this has right here, because that feels like real life right here. So this is a really big change to the grapples, but I think you guys will like it. If you're a loaderman, you'll like it anyway. So yeah, like I said, I got lots of feedback from you guys, and I did my best, and I tried to make it as good as I can. I think this is pretty good, so I think we'll leave it at that for the grapples for a while. and see how that tailors over. Occasionally you'll get logs that get stuck together, and that is just a weird new thing with the FS25, where they like magnet to each other, so there's two will get stuck together for whatever reason, and then you just gotta wait until they decide to unstick each other. It's kind of weird. Processors. Okay, processors. So dangle head, specifically processors. Obviously you guys saw the fixed head. So dangle head processors. Basically, the entire swing system has been redone. So the swing and the sway is different now. It's a lot more responsive in terms of how it swings. The weight distribution has changed, so you'll find it's way easier to like swing into your piles. So for instance, I watched a lot of videos with real life processors, watching the way they sway and the way they swing, and I wanted to get that smooth kind of rhythm. So after you're doing your cuts, it's really easy to time your swings back into the pile to grab, and it settles a lot nicer when you're doing those swings as well. So you guys will find, just in general, the overall feel of the dangle head processors is a lot more realistic in terms of how it swings. It doesn't bounce around as much as violently as it did before. They're just a lot smoother to the weight components, basically. The other thing I did was change the knife speed. So the knives are these guys back here. They are still a bit laggy feeling, but they have to be so that they don't crush the logs while you're processing them. If it squeezes too tight without that little bit of dampening, basically the knives will roll up and twist on the logs, and it looks ridiculous. So these do feel a little bit floaty in comparison to some of the grapples, but that's just part of the way that makes it smooth, I guess you could say. So I reduced the speed on these guys because I had a few people mention that when they went to grab from a pile, it would bite too quickly, and they weren't able to, like, they were missing logs, or it was just closing too hard and freaking out. So that's been slowed down a little bit so that it's a little bit more of a kind of a chill grab. So if we went from like this pile here, you can see when you go in, you're able to kind of grab it a lot smoother, and it still pops up into the grapple nicely, but it's not as violent as it was before. So you do have a little bit of play there where it's a little more responsive. Yeah, so that's basically the big stuff from that. Easier overall use of the dangle head processor, and that's for this South Star as well as the Wartaw that we have as well. Buncher heads. Okay, so the buncher heads have had a few things changed on them. Oh, excuse me. So the buncher heads now have the cut node has been changed a teeny bit. So some people were saying that every time they cut stumps, they were leaving behind a whole bunch of little bits on the ground. We call them cookies. Basically, it's a cookie. It's a little piece. It still does it on the larger trees a bit, but for the most part, it's been reduced by a little bit anyway. So those are the little cookies that are left on the ground there. I'm just going to throw this over here. So these little pieces that are left behind on the ground here, so like these little tiny pieces. So it's okay, I don't mind like a few being left behind, but I guess what was happening in multiplayer is it was leaving like tons of these behind. You get like 20 or 30 of them dumping on the ground or something, and I wasn't sure if that was just a glitch or what was going on. So I reduced the cut time on the head a little bit, so hopefully in theory it should be a lot smoother while you're cutting. You shouldn't leave as many of those behind. And for the most part, in my testing, I haven't left behind as many. If you cut large groups like I just did, there's a high % chance. Worst case scenario, if you're leaving behind, just run your head over them like this, and it'll clean up all the little pieces. Not exactly real life, but that's how it is. The other thing that's changed, we have improved the claw response. So the top claw is a little faster. Some people said it was too slow and they were missing grabs. So that's been improved, and the secondary claw is a lot more sturdy as well. So when you're going to pick groups of trees, you're going to find it hangs on a lot better. The important thing to remember is open that claw all the way, the secondary, and close it all the way. Some people don't do that, so push, close, open all the way, close all the way. And that way you'll know, like I'm just going to drop this with my secondary claw. So my primary claw is wide open, secondary claw is the only thing holding on. So open, dump. I think some people, when they get really fiery in this, they start grabbing trees and then they forget to close the claw all the way or open it all the way. So if I like go like this, grab a tree. So right now my secondary claw is closed on it all the way. But if I go for my next tree, grab it, but But if I only open my claw, some people just flick it. See how it doesn't open all the way? Well, if you don't open it all the way, it doesn't catch the next tree. So then when I go to dump, the top tree falls out. They're like, oh, what the hell? I did it. So make sure you are opening that secondary claw all the way open, all the way closed, all the way open, all the way closed. I've also heard that from some people in real life that operate. They just slam the button, especially when you're working with smaller trees. Make sure when you grab your next tree, cut, grab with the main, open all the way with the second, close all the way with the second, then you're ready. And then eventually you'll get a little feel for it, but just work slow. Start slow. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast, right? That's the old operator adage. So in general, though, the buncher is incredibly better than any version of the bunchers I've ever used. It's very smooth. As you can see, the operating is very smooth. It feels very good. And yeah, overall across the board. Oh, another thing that I should bring up that has come to attention of some people. So lighting. So all these machines have lights. If you hit F on your keyboard, it will turn on the lights. And in front of you, you can see the lights light up the area, right? So some people are saying, oh, the lights don't work. The lights don't work. So after we did some testing, if you have your graphics set too low in your graphics settings, sometimes it'll disable the lights on the machines. And I do not know why. It must be a graphics setting to try to save shadows and rendering or something. So if you don't see lights on your machines, like if you're turning your lights on and there's nothing happening, like there's no lights coming on, go check your graphics settings. We had one of our guys in our crew mention that you have to play with those graphics settings and make sure you turn your lights on or something like that. I haven't explored it, but apparently it's a graphics settings option, because I've had tons of emails and bug reports from people saying, oh, your machine's lights don't work. And I'll go in and I check and I'm like, well, they sure do. So every single machine has been checked. The lights work on every single machine. So if you're not seeing them in the game reflecting, it's a graphics settings issue on your end that you need to check out. All right, guys. Okay, well, we're going to leave it at that before I talk the rest of your earballs off. That's the 2.0 update. Again, we have tons of more machines coming. There's lots of updates. It's a big mess right now because there's so many different things on the go. But I wanted to get this out just because it's more of a stability update, and you get a few new toys in there to boot. So, all right, guys, we'll leave it at that, and we will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.